All right, we're live. Welcome, everyone. We're live. I'm Dylan, the founder of Cryptominded, and today we're live with a new ICO review. Welcome, everyone. We're live. Just one thing, Nicholas. I hear feedback from the video, so new ICO review. Turn off the video. Welcome, everyone. We're live. Just one thing, Nicholas. I hear feedback from the video, so. All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to sit with Nicholas Gregory today, co-founder and CEO at CommerceBlock. During this live stream, you can ask Nicholas any questions you may have about their ICO, the platform they built, the feasibility of their technology, etc. So questions can be asked through the live chat on YouTube. I'll do our best to get them answered. Please don't hesitate to ask them because this is basically a community AMA, so this is your chance to ask the questions that you want to hear about or the questions you want to get answers to from CommerceBlock and make an educated decision whether you want to participate in their ICO or not. So after the Ask Me Anything, you can send in your review for CommerceBlock and stand a chance to win a Ledger Nano S, one of these little devices. We'd love to hear your feedback about CommerceBlock and whether you want to invest or not, your concerns about the project, your positive remarks, etc. And this helps us keep these reviews unbiased and give the community a better idea of what others are thinking of the project. So coming Monday, we'll draw a winner and distribute the reviews. Be sure to check in and leave your review on the form. The description is in the link, or the link is in the description of the video. And yeah, let's get started. Nicholas, it's nice to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm from a computer science background, trained as a software engineer, worked originally in Silicon Valley during the dot-com period, then moved into finance, building trading systems for various banks, got into Bitcoin around 2012. That's when I first heard about it. I saw it a few times on Slashdot. Around 2012, I think a Java implementation was kind of built, so I started playing with that. Around 2014, a bug really bit, and I kind of decided to really put all my energy into it. And especially after the Mt. Gox thing, for some reason that solidified because it proved a lot of things about it. And then 2015, I quit working in finance and decided to put all my energy into it. I worked with a few startups. I was based in New York at the time, which means that I had access to really good Bitcoin community. I was doing work for various kind of like boutique software houses in crypto for kind of the OTC marketplace. About a year and a half ago, we were working on some kind of like challenges around OTC that kind of morphed into trade finance. And we looked at building kind of layers on top of Bitcoin and very much crypto to kind of ease those issues. I met my co-founder around 2015. He was working at an Israeli startup, very much from an AI background. And, we shared the same passion for Bitcoin. So we decided to kind of like found CommerceBlock. We both, strangely enough, decided to leave New York at the same time. Although I moved back to London, he moved back to his hometown in Israel. And we've been working remotely and we've been at it for about a year and a half. So.
All right, that's great. So you're in London now?
Correct, yes.
Right, awesome. Just across the pond, I'm in Belgium. So if you had to explain CommerceBlock and what you're building to your grandma in a few simple sentences, what would you say CommerceBlock does?
Complicated. I guess maybe if I talk about how we started, we were working in the OTC space. And one of the great things about Bitcoin and crypto in general, if I want to do a transaction with you, there's no trust involved. I can send you money, we're all good. But the moment we want to do some sort of trade, like if I wanted to sell you my car, we're back to using something centralized. So we decided that we wanted to solve that issue. And we experimented with a lot of challenges around that, to kind of still make that work. So we decided the best way was to kind of add a layer on top of like Bitcoin transactions, but rather than what previous attempts were, which was always kind of putting data into the blockchain and essentially turning Bitcoin or Ethereum into a big database, which we think is bad, we decided to kind of reference data as opposed to store data. And through that, we ended up building a layer on top, and that opened ourselves up to a lot of interesting use cases. And I think it negates a lot of kind of the need or the what we've seen happen in the blockchain world, where people have built private blockchains to solve some of those transactions. So give you an example. If I wanted to sell you my car, in our world, I could create you an invoice, mix it with a Bitcoin address, generate you a new address. I then give you my invoice, give you my address. You can then validate that invoice against that address. And then you can basically approve that transaction by sending money to that basically new address. And then I can release the money by my private key and the original invoice. So that means that you don't get my car in a few weeks' time, you have a something in the blockchain that you can validate that invoice against, but it's not actually stored in there. So we don't bloat the blockchain, and we actually create something without any modifications. And we spend a lot of time working on this. For us, this opened up a lot of use cases. And we wanted this to work, and we wanted to prove it. So we worked with the Bitcoin community, and we submitted a bit proposal. That's now been approved in draft. And now we're building applications around that. So we believe in the kind of like having side chains to crypto built on top of BIP 175, where we can execute smart contracts. But we don't necessarily, because of this technology, we don't necessarily need to build a new chain. We don't have to build a Tezos or an EOS. We can essentially work with existing blockchains like Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Ethereum. And that's where we are. We're a fintech layer on top of existing crypto. We want to negate the need for newer chains like Ethereum, and predominantly replace the need for like private blockchains like R3, Hyperledger, or digital asset holdings, or whatever those guys are doing. Sorry, you're on mute, sorry.
So, all right, so it's not an entire new blockchain, but it's a layer on top of that.
Yes.
Makes it very easy to do trustless transactions with third parties without having to store all that data on the blockchain itself.
Yes.
Right. So what compelled you to start working on this project? Like, what was the moment where you were like, yeah, like this makes sense?
Well, I mean, one of the things, 2 years ago, me and my co-founder were working in Bitcoin, and one of the things we're working on is OTC, helping people do remittance. And again, you go back to that issue, is like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, wonderful decentralized currencies, but to do any form of e-commerce, to do any form of transactions, you're back to using something centralized. So we didn't just invent a solution, we actually had a real problem. And I actually got contacted, because Bitcoin community it was relatively small, by people on the west coast of Africa that wanted to do sugar trade with Argentina. And the first thing I laughed about was, well, Bitcoin's very volatile. And they said, you don't know volatility, come to Africa, come to Argentina. And I said, but the issue they had is, how do you coordinate the transaction? How do you embed like a bill of ladings document? So that's when we started working in it. And a few of our solutions were wacky, but we always worked with the community. If you look at my Reddit signature on Reddit, you can see that, for years I was posting ideas on how to do this. And one of the Bitcoin core developers, either Luke Jr. or Greg Maxwell, suggested, look, maybe don't store data in the blockchain, maybe just reference. And I was lucky enough, living in New York, we have a really good Bitcoin community. A guy at the meetup said, look at the pay to contract protocol. And that was a kind of like a white paper written in 2012 by, I can't remember, two very smart people, Gerhard Hank and Timo Hank. Mm-hmm. And we spent a lot of time, it's very mathematical, formulas the size of my fist, we spent a lot of time, me and myself and Omar, in my apartment in Manhattan, kind of trying to get it to work. And once we got it to work, it was, sweet, and we really saw the value of it. And that's why we decided to kind of, build a project around it. It suddenly opened up a lot of use cases, which, I struggled with Bitcoin without building another centralized system. So,
right.
For example, I work with a property company now that, they potentially want to, use blockchains for property transactions, but they don't necessarily want to store the property metadata in the blockchain, because we've seen already with, kind of analysis companies, we can analyze Bitcoin transactions to figure out your spending patterns. Very much like when you go on the internet, if you've been shopping on a certain website, you get adverts for a certain website. The last thing we want to see that is now with assets on the blockchain, to know what kind of tokens you have. So this kind of removes that data, gives you a level of privacy, but also it doesn't bloat the blockchain. It uses the blockchain for what it is, payment, but you can now, with your transactions or reference invoices, reference potentially tokens. If you want to prove on the blockchain that you own a house, or you own a property, or own a car, we don't necessarily store it there, but we can reference it there. And I think that really because I was working for the banks when Bitcoin came out, and despite the conspiracy theories, a lot of them were looking at it, but they were concerned about their privacy. They said, okay, this is great, but how do we necessarily want all, customer details, all our transactions there? We still want to store it. And I think that's where a lot of the private blockchains came.
So where is this data stored in that case then? Because you're not storing it on the blockchain. Sorry?
So, yeah, it's like if me and you went into a legal contract and we work with lawyers, we're both responsible for storing that contract. If we both lose it, well, but what we can do is use the transaction between us to validate it. And to be honest, there's really good storage solutions out there. We don't need to reinvent them in Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin.
Do you see yourself using something like IPFS to store those contracts on there?
My co-founder's a big fan of IPFS, yeah, and yes, very much so. That's a good storage solution. We're not going to put that in a blockchain, which is a good payment solution or sound money. So.
All right. So what do you see as your biggest competitor? Like, are you competing with, say, Ethereum or Stellar, who are also doing like value transactions, or do you see another platform as your competitor?
At the moment, it's private blockchains. I think they're in the business of building intranets, and we're basically extending the internet. I see them, arguably you could say EOS and Tezos, but I think those projects have a high friction. It's, when we propose our solution, we're basically providing a simple solution to technology they already understand. It's a big ask to expect a lot of the business world to build their business on something like a Tezos, EOS, which doesn't exist yet. And as for the private blockchains, again, to me, it feels like 1999. Certain companies felt, the internet was bad because it was used for nefarious purposes. They built these complex intranets. Now, if you work for a Fortune 500 company, the thing you're scared of the most is the intranet. If you want to take a vacation, you spend like an hour trying to find the what's it called? And the vacation form on the intranet or an expense form. And, a young company like us, we use internet tools like Google Apps and all that. So I don't think it's good to be building intranets right now.
Okay, so what are the most immediate applications that you're building on CommerceBlock? Are there any like applications that already have been built on CommerceBlock that you can start using right away?
Yeah, so a lot of we've built quite a lot of technology. If you go to our GitHub, you can see them. They are very command line, but in the OTC space, we do have people that use us for invoicing. We did build a graphical user interface to prove, that use case I showed you about how you can mix an address. If you go to trade.commerceblock.com, you can actually use it and see for yourself that it actually works. And, we have clients there. Our main client probably for next year is we negotiated 2 partnerships, one with a property company called HIP. They are looking, and we've been doing work with them to see how they can do blockchain transactions involving property. If you go to hip.property, you can see their business model about how they want to, work in the real estate space. And I think we solve a big problem there, and we have a good relationship. We also recently partnered with CG Blockchain, which I think was actually a significant shift. They have been working with hedge funds for many years on private blockchains. They've decided to look at, Bitcoin, Litecoin, which I think was a huge shift. So they've partnered with us. They're building this kind of like app store for hedge funds who want to tokenize their assets. We're going to be their preferred vendor for when they want to use what we say public blockchains. And I think that's potentially huge. And we've recently, only a couple of weeks ago, we kind of like did a deal with the global advisors team. So there's more news to come out with that. That's kind of fresh on the ink. If you look at what they do on their website, you look at what we've discussed in our blog, you can see there's probably a lot of synergy and there's probably big things coming there.
Right. So will they be using CommerceBlock's infrastructure as well, or is that something you can't talk about yet?
I can't tell you. It's obviously they're a company. They didn't buy us just for fun, but yeah, we're definitely, that's the vision. You'd have to speak to them more, but they've taken, we made a press release. I met them 2 months ago. We have a very, for us, they're the perfect marriage. They're not new to crypto. They're actually one of the people to make, to do products in crypto for the last few years. And they also have a long track record in commodities. And we've written in our white paper and our blog many examples of how we believe that assets or commodities should be tokenized on top of our platform, on top of Bitcoin and Litecoin. And I think there's a potentially huge stuff we can do there. And yeah, I'm waiting for them to announce it, obviously.
All right. So a good question from Jeremiah. Can you explain the difference between what you are proposing, especially with regards to the invoicing aspect, and the difference between Request Network? Are you familiar with Request Network?
Well, I did read the white paper. I mean, like many people, there's 1,000 white papers a week. Request was very much Ethereum specific from what I remember. And please, if I'm wrong on Request, I mean, I'm not an expert on other people's ICOs. It was very much Ethereum specific, and they store the invoice. We're taking a very, we're not building on top of a platform. We're building a federated sidechain where we are totally neutral from the platform. We don't store people's data. We don't store people's invoice. We basically allow people to reference data on their transactions. We run federated sidechains if there are more complex things in the sidechains, like some sort of logic, and we want a combination of keys to decide how to invoke that logic.
So what's in it for you?
Blockchain agnostic as well. We follow liquidity. So we do a lot of work on Bitcoin. We do have a lot of experience in Ethereum. We run Ethereum nodes. Different blockchains do different things, but we don't. Our solution was built very much on cryptography, so that we could support majority of blockchains. So where there's liquidity, where there's business sense, we work with that. I think that's the way to be, really.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, I thought you were actually done talking, but sorry. No. So what's in it for you? Because, for example, for Request Network, like they're providing a service where they kind of have to intervene in a way. It's not completely decentralized. And what you're saying is we're completely like, you don't really need us. Like we're like just a platform. We're completely decentralized. We're not storing your data. How do you earn money with this?
Sure. So we're going to run infrastructure, mainly federated sidechains, and we're also doing some work with Lightning. That's another use case, but we run hardware for this stuff. So if you wanted to do complicated use cases or just complicated invoicing, we would run the smart contracts off-chain for you, and we would get paid for running that hardware. So we have a lot of experience in kind of cloud-based technology. My co-founder, that's sort of his specialty. So the model we have, say, with a property company, is we would run these side chains for them. We don't control the keys. The property company controls one key, their customer controls another, and another third-party custodian would control that. We manage that hardware. We ensure the network. We provide. We're very much like a miner network, a bit like what we're bootstrapping a network. We run the original miners. We hope in time that people will be incentivized to join our network, and that's the issue. That's why we basically went with the token approach. So people would be rewarded in tokens. But yeah, we are running hardware here for clients.
Can anyone run the hardware for it, or can?
Yes, that's a good word. That's why the word we use, because we were never big on the utility token. We said we're a network token. We provide open source software, and people can join our network. We provide certain services for the network, which is open source, like availability, discovery. And different hardware will, different nodes will have different capabilities. Some will have very high secure, like if you touch the hardware, it explodes. Some can be less. I mean, you charge different models for that.
All right, that's interesting. So okay, what do you see the most exciting use case of CommerceBlock? I mean, we talked about the current use cases that are being developed, but like, if you had to name one use case, maybe it's like 5 years out from now, like what does most excite you?
I think the tokenization of assets, because I think that's being done a lot, but I think we offer something more interesting there. We could potentially work with an oil company, but rather than being some sort of oil token, we could potentially go to Shell Oil, and I used to work for Shell many years ago, and say your barrels of oil can be on our platform, but we would work it so that you could trade on that using a Bitcoin transaction. But we provide a layer with that BIP175 where it's not just something that could sit on Bittrex. It's actually something that if I send you a barrel of oil, you would have to approve it. You would have to know you own it. And I think that kind of like tokenization, but we wouldn't store anything on the blockchain. It'd be totally transparent, but your private key can show you access to it. You can prove it. And I think once you get that, that to me is probably the most exciting. From a technical point of view, I mean, we're very exciting on these kind of layer 2 networks like Lightning. And one of the issues that we found doing Bitcoin trading is, not Bitcoin, but OTC, is Bitcoin's very volatile. So, depending on the day of the week, your iPhone can be $200 or $10,000. So we basically extended the Lightning network to look at kind of like something called, I forgot the word, but basically doing synthetic swaps. So a Lightning channel, you basically open and close a channel to basically create your Lightning contract. We basically are looking at things like how to peg that to an oracle. So if me and you basically did a trade and we're worried that depending on the price of Bitcoin, you win or I win, we can basically link that to some sort of pricing oracle. So, we can both protect ourselves. And I think when you combine that with our federated sidechains, I mean, that's interesting. And, I think next year you're going to see a lot of exciting stuff on layer 2 solutions, probably less debate about block sizes and stuff, more about what I call the caching layers. And from a technology point of view, definitely doing stuff with Lightning and pegging to oracles. That's what, that's what gets us happy or keen.
Right. And so when you're talking about Lightning, you're talking about the Bitcoin Lightning Network, the one that is being created by Blockstream, right?
Well, it's not being created by Blockstream. It's an open project. But and there's a lot of contributors. But the thing is, you're seeing the same patterns. I mean, the free, I'd say, coins I know probably the best is Bitcoin. They have Lightning. Ethereum has Raiden, the same design pattern. Another coin I play with when I'm bored is Decred. They're doing Lightning. So, everyone's doing these kind of like payment channels. So if you implement it for one, and with atomic swaps, they all the same. I mean, this is the future. So you're seeing, although all these coins, all these chains are very different, they are following the same pattern to achieve scalability.
Right.
And
so
if you think like that, you stay agnostic. So.
Yeah. So let's say my dad wants to transfer his house. For example, they're selling their house and someone else bought it, and they have these certificates and they want to do a tokenized transfer. Do you envision older people and such using it, or do you look more at current technology advanced people or more companies? What is your target audience?
Well, at the moment we're very B2B. I mean, this is a big space, and we think there's a need for a fintech layer. So, the house scenario, could we do that on our invoicing platform? Yes, but I think there's a lot of subtleties, predominantly legal subtleties, and that's why we would probably say work with a company like HIP, because a lot of their business is on dealing the legalities. But you, in theory, could do that with our invoicing platform. I mean, if that answers it. But ultimately, we provide the infrastructure between blockchains and what businesses want to use. It's a bit like, I worked for many banks. We didn't used to talk to the exchanges directly. We worked with fintech layers that provided exchange connectivity and stuff like that. And that's where we think there's a need, because at the moment, a reason why you've seen a lot of private blockchains is there's a big gap between, say, Bitcoin, Ethereum development and what businesses want. I mean, businesses don't really care about smart contracts, Lightning and stuff. They want a fintech layer. So, and that's where we found, we've had no shortage of clients in that sense that want to work with us to that and, want to be abstracted, but basically want to have their business solution solved. And I think that's what gives us a compelling, I think there's a big hole here. And that's why I think we've been able to onboard clients before the ICOs even completed. I mean, CG blockchain was a very big announcement for us, because that was a lot of hard work, pitching people that have been rammed on the head, the private blockchain story by R3 Hyperledger, to get them to start seeing the light, I think was, for me, a significant shift. And I think that shows you where, public blockchains are the future. So.
Right. So one more question from Jeremiah. How are payments settled very specifically? Could you give a quick overview of how a payment is settled?
Sorry, what do you mean by payment settled? I mean, so we don't do the payments.
I think the transaction between two parties.
Well, we're not getting involved in people's transactions. We run the smart contracts. So and that's the beauty of it. If you're basically doing payments between one of your customers, nothing changes. What we do is we allow you to add transaction data in it, whether that's an invoice, a bill of ladings. Where you would use our federated sidechains is if you want certain rules, like certain smart contracts. Probably not as complex as a lot of the Ethereum contracts, probably more smart, but what happens to refund? And their federated sidechains are based on multi-sig. So depending on certain signatories, you could set up the rules and how you get refunded, like if the property is delayed or if the transaction is delayed. So we don't hold people's money. I mean, we do a lot of the security around the smart contracts, around the multi-sig, because that's our skill set.
Right. Yeah. So basically, I think the question was that how are the transactions settled between two parties, not necessarily you guys settling the transaction, but how does it work technically on the blockchain?
Well, so in our view, if I was to sell you my house, it would be the money would be released upon you sending the money to that specific address, and I could release it with my private key and the original invoice. So my original invoice is basically like the zero knowledge proof. It's kind of like and that can all be set up with the way we design the smart contract for you. Maybe you want other things. For example, with a trade finance client you can imagine like doing a shipment from say A to B involves many people signing off, like a warehouse agent, some sort of inspection agent. But that's a multi-sig thing. We provide the container to run that. But the key thing is that we run this off-chain. So you're not going to be worried about gas costs. And there's a level of centralization, but we don't control it. Because one thing I noticed working in the in the trade finance space is people go on about decentralization, but ultimately for big deals, people want someone to phone up to find out what's gone wrong. What blockchain gives you is transparency. So now we know how much CommerceBlock is charging. We know where the blockage is. It's not like modern day finance where we put our money in the bank. We don't know what they're doing with our money. And then you have all the conspiracy theories at the goal, what's going on with our money? We just don't know. What blockchain gives you is transparency.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. And decentralization, it's nice, but you still, if you're going to, you live in Belgium, if you're going to send me a shipment and we do a deal, you want someone to call if that shipment doesn't come, or I don't send you the money. But there is something there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for answering that question. So what do you see as the biggest threat to the project's success? What would derail it?
I mean, for us, we're very confident. We've been in this space for a while. We're kind of old timers in crypto. I mean, I still think there are threats to crypto in general. I mean, more generic threats in terms of like minor centralization. I think there's a lot of work there. Regulation is big. That's one of the reasons we're very happy to work with global advisors, because they've been doing this business for years in terms of dealing with regulators. So that's a great people to speak to. I think more the crypto adoption. I think there's still a fear, but we have existing clients, so we don't fear. Can we hit a large scale? Yeah, that's a concern. I mean, it's one of the reasons someone else could potentially raise more money, do more marketing than us, and the private blockchain guys could hang around for a few more years selling their private blockchains. It may take longer for us to deliver we still have private blockchains right now, which are causing a lot of problems in big banks and big Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, I think the quicker people smell the coffee and realize, stop building intranets, build internets, I think that the quicker we are to success.
Okay. Last technical question. What is a federated sidechain? Asks Christian.
Sure. So sidechains is a very generic word. You have basically what most people think of sidechains are things like what Rootstock are building. And, we have a good relationship with Rootstock. We don't see them as a competitor. I used to speak to them fairly well. Their sidechains are more based on miners. Miners are involved. You send a transaction to a certain address. It goes on to like another layer of miners, and they merge it back into, say, Bitcoin or another thing, or another chain. Federated is very much built based on multi-sig. You're basically sending it to an address, and it's kind of centralized because the hardware would be managed by someone, and it's based around multi-sig. So rather than miners mining it, which gives you decentralization, although there is a certain layer of centralization with the miners at the moment anyway, you would agree that a combination of signatures can improve that transaction. So it's a simpler version of a sidechain. I mean, the way I tend to say it to business people or technical, I mean, in the early dot-com type years, people, when they were looking at B2B on the internet, a lot of people came up with very complex specifications like web services, SOAP. Yeah. Mm-hmm. People at Google came out with REST, which was basically an IP address and a few characters. Our model is an IP address and a few characters. So we focus on the important things like security, etc. We're not trying to do something very complex. And I think that gives us low friction. So when I work with, say, the property company or CG Blockchain, who understand Bitcoin quite well, when I say to them, okay, well, this is our model, it's not like, okay, we're not having to build our whole business on top of EOS, I don't know, Tezos, or, you know, Hyperledger. It's like, okay, we know multi-sig, we've kind of experienced with multi-sig. This makes sense to us, this resonates. This gives us a quick time to market.
All right, so you guys are currently in the ICO. The ICO is currently live.
Yes.
You're issuing an ERC20 token, right? So how will these work with the CommerceBlock chain or platform, and how can one utilize the token?
Sure. So, I mean, some of the challenges we have with the token, I mean, using the token, you know, to basically set up one of these side chains, we would take tokens as payment. We want people to join our network. For example, I wrote a paper on how to build a decentralized network on top of a decentralized exchange. Well, I'd say a blog post. We've already worked with people that are saying, okay, we would take bit 175 and potentially build a decentralized exchange on top of us. Now, we don't really want to build that, but we will, you know, we would incentivize them. If they join our CommerceBlock network, they potentially would join, provide those services for our customers and get rewarded in CPTs. Now, the challenge with tokens is pricing. Yeah, pricing can be all over the place. So we would probably work with what I was talking, synthetic swaps, so that we could peg the pricing to certain oracles, so that if a business wants to use us, depending on the price of the token, he's not losing money or making money. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And I don't think anyone's kind of solved that. So we're going to take a punt based on the stuff we've done around synthetic swaps, where we can peg the CBT to some sort of oracle. And that's complex because you'd have to peg it to a range of exchanges, kind of get it linked. But we have some experience doing stuff like that before. I mean, in the OTC space, we spent a bit of time on the gift cards, which was a lot of people doing that in Bitcoin. So, and that's one, I think, our first challenge. But our goal is to have our sidechain running relatively quickly after the ICO. And we want our sidechains to be able to be fueled with those CBTs. Originally, we were looking at moving to Rootstock, but, you know, we've been using Ethereum quite a while. I don't think there's an issue running an Ethereum node as well. We're quite comfortable with Ethereum. You know, yeah, I don't want to get into an Ethereum versus blockchain. They're different tools. They're good. They're good at certain things. When you use one to do one thing, one to the other, that's where it gets confusing. There, it's like you have a toolbox that one's a spanner, one's a hammer. You decide which is the spanner or the hammer.
So, what made you guys decide to do an ICO? Like, a question that we often get, or like, not really a question, but a concern from a lot of the members, is that they don't always see the necessity of an ICO. What is the purpose of the ICO in your case, and why are you guys doing it?
Well, I guess why we like the token. I mean, we did spend a lot of time, especially our background is very much Bitcoin, but, you know, we did spend time with colored coins. So tokens aren't something new. Tokens have been around for a while. I mean, you have OmniLayer, you have colored coins. I think what Ethereum community did very well is basically bring, you know, they did great marketing around this stuff. And for us, if we hadn't have used a token, we'd essentially built a centralized system. You know, we would be running our side chains. People would say it's very centralized. By having a token, you kind of like, you know, you open up your network. You incentivize people to join your network. So we've kept a percentage of our tokens that we want to give to partners. Those partners are going to be open source developers that can build something like a DEX, maybe finish off the invoicing platform. So it's a great way to bootstrap a network. And that's the way we see it. I mean, I don't really buy the utility token. To me, that just sounds like a gift card and a way to get money. That's my opinion, yeah? I want to see a network token. So we've got to make the network easy. We've got to make it so that we have some sort of like running daemon so that a developer can write their business logic, write their idea, and join our network with relative ease. And if we do that, then the network will grow. And over time, maybe we get kicked off the network because people are running our services better than us. But to me, that makes sense. That's crypto. I mean, you know, the original miners of Bitcoin are long gone. Now it's all complicated ASIC farms with much more high tech. US 2009, it was, you know, laptops like the ones we're using now. So
why would someone buy the CommerceBlock token in the ICO currently? Like, what is their incentive?
Well, because I think we have clients, which I think is quite rare. You know, stats don't lie. You can go onto our Twitter accounts, you can go onto our GitHub accounts, you can see we've been around for a while. So we have I think we're one of the few people that have a track record in crypto. I mean, the fact that we're the first, ICO to have a BIP. And, going for a BIP is painful. You go on development channels, you're opening yourself to criticism, and it's a good thing. I wish more of these ICOs would write a white paper, post it on a Devin forum, and have people that are probably smarter than them look at it and find security holes. We went through that process for our BIP. A few of the core developers found security holes, and that was after I have personal relationships with some of the Bitcoin core team. I got them to review the BIP, but other core developers found security holes. And I think we're dealing with people's money, and I think we've gone through the process of having our code peer reviewed. So I can now go to a client and they say, well, is this safe? I said, well, yeah, it's all public. Go to Bitcoin, dev mailing list. You'll see, well-known core developers find a security hole, and you'll see us come back 2 weeks later saying, thank you, we found it. I think that should be the process. So, and I think when you combine that with the fact that we've got clients that are willing to use us, I think we're brilliant, yeah.
Just one quick question from Jeremiah. Where's the best place to post your white paper if you want that kind of feedback? There's a lot of people watching probably that are either like in the ICO industry themselves, like marketing or working on a project, and yeah, they're curious.
Bitcoin Talk or Telegram. We're very open. We would love more technical feedback. I mean,
I think specifically for like if they have a white paper, where would they go and share? Not necessarily a specific question about CommerceBlock, but maybe be of
in terms of
people.
I mean, we were a bit different in that we worked with the Bitcoin community. It really depends, but there's no shortage of forums where you can basically debate your technology, and I think we need to create a culture of more peer review. Peer review is healthy. I'd rather, a core developer find a security hole in August this year than us go live next year after having raised money and then finding a security hole. Then we'd be more famous then, probably, but not for good reasons.
Right. All right. So we're getting to the last questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share about CommerceBlock? And this is basically the moment for anyone on the chat who still has a question to ask them right now. And we'll do our best to get them answered. If your question has already been answered in the beginning of the video, won't address it again. But I'm curious to see any other questions come in. And yeah, if there's anything else that you want to share right now, let me know.
Sure. So in our white paper, I can't remember the exact figures, but we've committed to using a certain amount of our revenue to support open source development. So if people like what we're doing and potentially want to work on open source development like federated sidechains, Bitcoin, Lightning networks, they're welcome to come talk to us. They wouldn't necessarily, we would want them part of our team, but they would be there as a consultant, but they would be free to extend the network. And that's a lot because me and my co-founder, we were very lucky living in New York, having access to a lot of the core devs, and that saved us a lot of time, and it's a good thing. And also we are reserving 30% of the tokens to bootstrap our network. If people have ideas where they could use BIP 175 or use what we're building and build another decentralized exchange, or have an interesting idea, we would fund them with the tokens. And we only release those tokens once we're able to receive payment, that they could join our network. And we hope that's where we get.
That's the 30% partner allocation in your distribution, right? Yeah. So actually, that was one question that I personally had. Only a maximum of 40% of the tokens are distributed to the token sale, or like the ICO investors. That means that 60% or so tokens are held by CommerceBlock. But sorry.
Yeah.
What is the reasoning behind that? And a lot of people out there concerns about that being too centralized and you guys having too many tokens. Like, is there anything that you can tell about that?
Sure. I mean, at the time when we made the decision, I mean, we have one of my friends who's a Silicon Valley developer. He was one of the lead developers at BitGo, Mason Border. He advised us because, I don't know what the right thing or the wrong thing to do in ICO. We're still in an embryonic stage here. But we looked at similar projects that were building networks like Civic, and we felt that we wanted to build a network quickly. For CBT to survive, we build a network. We have another member. I mean, obviously now that we have global advisors involved, they would also have a say, but we want to grow the network. In terms of the company tokens, they are locked for 1 year, and the partnership tokens can only be released once the token has use. Now, I think that means for the token to be released to a partner, we have to have a network up and running. And I think that would, that kind of protects investors, because I think let's be honest, there's not many tokens that are in use right now. Mm-hmm. So we are under pressure to get this token up and running, used into our sidechains. Then, for open source projects, we'll release them. And I think, we have to be held to that. So yeah, if you look at other people that are doing networks, we looked at Civic, and we also looked, I think, at Ox. They were the only similar people that were doing what we were doing. Again, right, so, a network token as opposed to a utility token.
Right. So if I understand correctly, a partner token is not really like big businesses or something, but I could be a partner if I wanted to build something useful on.
Well, I mean, we don't discriminate. If IBM basically want to join our network, and they want to open source development.
No, of course, but I'm saying like you guys don't decide like, okay, this is going to be the project. We're only going to have like big companies like come in and partner with us. But if I have an interesting solution, maybe like I could come in and also like build for the platform, for the network essentially, and receive some tokens that way.
Yeah, give you an example. We're already speaking to a guy who wants to build a decentralized exchange. He's already got a GitHub repo. I think that's really slick what he's doing. We want to help him out, and he's going to be rewarded. And
is there any community governance from like the ICO investors, like they could dictate which projects should like be funded through those partners?
We haven't built that, but we don't. Okay, so we don't have a foundation. We're based in Gibraltar, but with global advisors joining the company and taking we haven't finished obviously we're in agreement with them, but obviously these things take time, due diligence, paperwork, lawyers. But anyway, I won't go into that. They have a say as well. So I mean, it's not just myself. But right. We're open to government models. It's.
Thank you for clarifying that. So last two questions from the community. In case of the incentives, how will you actively bring the tokens to exchanges, or are you solely dependent on the atomic swaps?
Look, obviously if you come on our Telegram group, 60% of the questions is when are we going to be listed on the exchange? I can't answer that question because I'll upset exchanges. But, that's obviously we're in talks like every other ICO is. I mean, that's all I can say about it. Yes, we are in talks. Get the advantage. We do want to be on an exchange because otherwise you may end up on an exchange you don't like anyway. But we need, we have real clients. We need to get these tokens so that the clients can start using our product.
Yeah. So, with other words, you'll try to get on an exchange, but you can't guarantee anything.
Otherwise, we've got a bit of a problem with our clients if we don't.
Yeah, makes sense. So how would burning tokens affect the platform? I don't really understand that question completely.
Okay, so probably because we burn unsold tokens. So one of the concerns is, what happens to all the tokens we don't sell? Will they get burnt?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's just leave that question. So one last question: how do you join the CommerceBlock network? Like, if I have an interesting idea, where do I go?
Best place is to come to Telegram, and we'll, if you've got some interesting, we would like to see some evidence of software. I mean, my co-founder Omar would like to look at it first and do analysis. But if you've got a good idea, we'll try and have a daemon up and running, early Q1 next year. And then that would be a case. We wouldn't release tokens until the network is live, because I think we've got to have a live network so that, and getting those tokens would mean like you join the network. We can't just give tokens for, you have to be in a position to join the network, and that's our goal. I mean, that's what we're building. That's, because separation of concerns, we're building infrastructure here, and we have to grow the network. Otherwise, we're just another centralized blob, which is not what we want to be.
Mm-hmm. Gary, I see your question, but unfortunately, we already discussed that earlier on. Like, they can't really completely disclose it yet. So the question was, what kind of stuff you're building with global advisors?
I mean, just look at what global advisors do. Go to our white paper. I'm pretty sure you'll connect the dots. I mean, they have a lot of experience in commodities. We've written a white paper, we've written blogs about how commodities should go on blockchains. And I think it's a good marriage in that sense.
All right. Yeah, let's wrap up. That's it. Thank you for tuning in, everyone, on this live AMA with Nicholas Gregory, CEO and co-founder at CommerceBlock. I hope you learned something about their project, and we'd love to hear your feedback. As I said earlier, in the description of this video, you'll find a link to a form where you can leave a review and win a Ledger Nano S. So be sure to give a detailed review. I'll be filtering out those reviews that are just trying to win the Ledger and not giving any solid answers. But yeah, basically, we really would like to have your feedback to keep these ICO reviews unbiased and give others a good opinion of what people in the community think of CommerceBlock and the project so that they can make an educated decision whether to invest. So yeah, that's really important to us. So we'd love to get your feedback, and we'll distribute the report on Slack and in the video on Monday. So you'll see it there. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, just if you want to know more about commerceblock.com, just go to their website, join their Telegram, ask any questions that you have remaining on their Telegram. I bet Nicholas or any of their team members is more than willing to help and answer for them. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and goodbye. Until next week.